I'd like to begin by offering you a little information about my own positionality. My name is Dr. Christina Flemming. I have a PhD in lifelong learning from Mount St. Vincent University. I am a white, able-bodied settler here in Jabuktuk. I am also a cisgender queer woman and the mother of a biracial neurodiverse daughter. Her name is Matilda. I begin by offering you a bit about my own positionality, both as a way to introduce myself, but also as a way to acknowledge the privilege that my various identity markers afford me. While I have experienced homophobia as a queer woman, I have also benefited from and continue to benefit from certain facets of my identity, including my race, socioeconomic background, and educational background. In terms of why I decided to record an equity, diversity, and inclusion video, there are several reasons. One, I feel that within the Academy we have traditionally privileged the written word, and in my teaching I love to emphasize the value of oral storytelling. So I see this as a decolonizing act. And also when it comes to social justice discussions, I think what we need is active dialogue, active discussion. So this format just feels right. In my own research and teaching, I highly value self-reflection. Self-reflection is so important because we need to look inward before we can begin to look outward and understand how we see and interact with the world. It's very vital in terms of social justice to understand that your intent is not always your impact. In terms of my own teaching, I was recently facilitating a course and we were discussing microaggressions, microaffirmations, privilege, and structures of power. When students from marginalized groups stood up, one student in particular, a Muslim student, stood up and said, "I am Muslim, I am visibly different, I wear a hijab. Why can't we just acknowledge that I'm different and celebrate that?" And I love creating spaces where students are able to reclaim their power in ways like that. Another thing that happened recently in one of my courses was that several students, rather joyously, proclaimed that I was the first openly queer professor they'd ever had. It really spoke to me about the importance of representation, but also the importance of storytelling in the classroom as a way to build community. At times I share parts of my story, and this invites students to share parts of their own. There are times when we're having difficult discussions about things like racism, colonialism, ableism, homophobia, transphobia, gender-based discrimination, socioeconomic struggles. And students express a bit of overwhelm and they say, "How can we solve all these problems?" And that's when I say, we can't individually solve all these problems, but it is our responsibility to enter the problem. So what does entering the problem look like? To me, entering the problem means building a vocabulary that enables you to discuss complex topics, in particular how certain groups of people have historically been marginalized. Entering the problem includes, as I've said, looking inward, understanding how your own privilege and your own struggles have shaped your experiences, your values, your beliefs. To me, entering the problem includes working alongside of community, but only in a genuine and authentic way. And lastly, I'd like to say, social justice discussions can be emotional because we're talking about systems of oppression in ways that have touched people's lives directly in some cases. So it has to be okay that these discussions can be emotional. It has to be okay that these discussions can be difficult. But I'd like to say lastly that social justice discussions don't have to be inherently negative. I mentioned celebrating difference. I think we can use these discussions as a way to honor and celebrate the voices and perspectives of those who have been traditionally marginalized.